They thought he was just a prisoner, but in 10 minutes, the entire crew would be dead. And the truth he revealed would change the fate of the galaxy forever. The prisoner in chains, the cold hum of the spaceship's engines echoed through the metal walls. Commander Zald stood in front of a thick, reinforced door, staring at the glowing security panel. His sharp alien eyes never blinked, but inside, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: nervousness. Inside that room was a creature most believed couldn't be captured, a creature that had haunted the legends and battle reports for generations. A human. The security officer beside him looked at the monitor and muttered under his breath, "That thing is uglier than a nebulous shadow." Commander Zald didn't respond. As a leader, he couldn't allow himself to joke about the prisoner, even if he secretly agreed. Instead, he asked the question that weighed heavily on his mind. "Are the restraints holding?" The officer hesitated. That hesitation was enough to make Zald's stomach tighten. "Yes, Commander. This one doesn't have cybernetic enhancements, and the restraints are reinforced with titanium-like tungsten alloy." Zald didn't like the lack of confidence in his voice. Legends claimed that no restraints could truly hold a human. Still, he took a deep breath and entered the interrogation cell. The air inside felt heavier, almost electric. Sitting at the center of the small room was the human, dressed in what looked like a military officer's uniform. His hair was neatly cut, and his face carried an expression that didn't match the situation: calm, almost amused. Heavy gauntlets locked his hands in place, and chains connected them to the table. As Zald stepped in, the human looked up. His lips curled into a grin, not a friendly one, but a grin that carried confidence and danger. The commander began speaking into the recorder embedded in his armor. "Interrogation commencing at 272-14398. Present in the room, Commander Zold and the captured alien pilot." The human tilted his head and interrupted. "Steve," he said, his voice clear and perfectly fluent in galactic standard. Zold narrowed his eyes. "What?" "My name," the human said, still smiling. "Steve, I am a human." For a brief moment, Zold's mind raced. This was it. After years of fighting a ghost-like enemy that left no bodies and no technology behind, he had one alive. A real human. The legends, the stories, the warnings, it was all real. The proof was sitting right in front of him. He forced himself to stay composed. "You'll answer my questions and nothing else," he said firmly. Steve shrugged casually.
"Sure."
"Go ahead, Zald. Didn't waste time. What are you doing here?" The human's grin widened. "Answering your question." Zald's jaw tightened. This wasn't going to be easy. Humans were known for their psychological tactics, for turning interrogations into conversations they controlled. He wasn't going to let that happen. But Steve leaned forward, the heavy gauntlets scraping against the table as he moved. "You want this to be useful, Commander? You'll have to ask the right question, the one you're avoiding." Zald studied him carefully. The human's uniform, the way he held himself, his calm under pressure, all of it screamed military training. Yet there was something else too, something unsettling. "Why?" Zald asked finally. Steve's expression softened, just slightly, almost as if he respected the question. "That's better," he said, "and it has more than one answer." He raised his eyes, locking them with Zald's. "The first answer is simple. I have no reason to lie to you. I am alone here, on a Galactic Council battle carrier, surrounded by thousands of your kind. Running or fighting would be pointless." Zald gave a slow nod, acknowledging the logic, but he didn't lower his guard. Steve continued, "The second answer is longer. And you're going to want to hear it." The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship. Zald stepped back, leaning against the far wall. He had the feeling this wasn't going to be a normal interrogation. The human shifted in his chair. The chains rattled softly, but his posture remained relaxed. "You want to know what I'm doing here?" Steve said. "You're about to find out. But you won't like the answer." In that moment, Commander Zeld realized something disturbing. The human wasn't afraid. He wasn't nervous. He was in control. And that was far more dangerous than any weapon. "The first mistake of humanity's..." Steve leaned back in his chair, the heavy gauntlets scraping the table again. His voice lost some of its playfulness, replaced with something calmer, almost regretful. When humanity first reached the stars, he began, we thought we had achieved the greatest dream of our species. We had broken the limits of our world. Faster than light travel was ours. We could cross the galaxy in days. We believed the universe was open to us, ours to explore, ours to claim. Zald stayed silent, letting the human speak. Steve's eyes seemed to drift far away, as if he was seeing it all again. He found planets, thousands of them. Worlds with oceans, forests, mountains, air you could breathe. Some had skies painted in colors our artists had never imagined. And in our excitement, we did what humans always do. We rushed in without thinking of the consequences. He sighed, the weight of his words heavy. We colonized everything we could reach. If a planet looked livable, we claimed it. We built cities, farms, factories. We brought our plants and animals. We brought ourselves. And we never stopped to think about the life that was already there. Zald's eyes narrowed. You destroyed them? Steve nodded slowly. He didn't mean to, but yes, everywhere. We settled. The original life forms began to die. It didn't happen overnight. It took years, sometimes decades, but it always happened. Our plants choked theirs. Our animals hunted theirs. Our diseases, our bacteria, things that were harmless, to us, killed entire species that had no defense. It didn't matter if the life was tiny or towering, it all faded. His voice lowered, almost to a whisper. We had been searching for intelligent life for centuries. We thought maybe we were alone in the galaxy because we were the first. Turns out, we made it true, destroyed every chance for another intelligent species to rise naturally. Without meaning to, we became the executioners of the galaxy's future. He looked down at the table, his fingers twitching slightly in the gauntlets. When we realized what we had done, it was already too late. We tried to stop. We abandoned colonies. We left planets in hopes their ecosystems could recover, but the damage was too deep. The biospheres were gone. The planets were dying. We tried something desperate, terraforming barren worlds and seeding them with life from our archives. We thought we could play creator. Zal tilted his head. And you failed? Steve gave a bitter laugh. Completely. The ecosystems never lasted. The plants wouldn't grow. The animals wouldn't adapt. We had proven ourselves to be destroyers, failed at being creators. There was a long pause before he continued. In the end, we were left with nothing but memories and archives, digital records of species that would never walk, fly, or swim again. We created nature reserves in space, enclosed habitats to keep the last surviving plants and animals alive. But even those failed in time. Life withered. Extinction became permanent. Zald could see the subtle shifts in the human's posture. Shoulders slumped. Gaze unfocused. His voice carrying something more than regret. It was guilt. Deep, crushing guilt. But time, Steve said softly, does what it always does. Moved forward, and with it, we found new paths. Eventually, we developed technology to cross the void between galaxies. He sat forward slightly, locking eyes with Zald again. That's when we found another galaxy, and this one was alive. It didn't have a spacefaring civilization, but its planets were full of life jungles, oceans, deserts, all teeming. With creatures and plants, it was beautiful. His voice hardened now. We made a rule, the first rule. No life-bearing planet would ever be touched by our colonists again, not by humans, but by anyone. If a species evolved there, it stayed. We would only take barren worlds and shape them to live on. We would protect life this time, not destroy it. Zald's eyes narrowed again. Protect it. Why? Because we couldn't undo what we did to our own galaxy, Steve said firmly. But we could make sure it never happened again anywhere. We patrolled the skies. We stopped meteors from hitting inhabited worlds. We gave medicine to cure their diseases. We offered clean energy to those just reaching industrial age. We taught civilizations how to grow without destroying themselves. There was a shadow in his expression now. And when they grew strong, enough to travel the stars, some of them wanted to take the worlds we were guarding. They saw them as resources, told them no, when they tried to take them by force. His voice turned cold. We fought them. The silence that followed was sharp. Zald studied the human's face, seeing the truth in every line. This wasn't just a soldier talking. This was someone who had lived the weight of an entire species' mistakes. Steve leaned back, his chains clinking. It was our first mistake. Commander, we explored without thinking. It cost the galaxy everything. The second chance, Steve's voice softened, but his eyes stayed sharp, as if every word he spoke was carved from memory. When we found that second galaxy, it felt like we had been given a second life. It was untouched, pure, the kind of beauty you can't create, only destroy if you're careless. And we swore we wouldn't repeat our first mistake. He leaned forward slightly, his chained hands moving slowly across the table. That's when we made the first rule official. No life-bearing planet is to be occupied by anyone not native to its ecosystem. Didn't matter how rich the soil was, how plentiful the resources, or how perfect the weather was, we left. Those planets alone. Always. Zald tilted his head. So you became guardians? Steve gave a short nod. Yes. We began colonizing only barren planets, lifeless rocks, and empty worlds. We transformed them with terraforming technology, making them habitable for our people. We created cities, farms, oceans life that was ours, built without taking from others. His eyes flickered with something almost like pride. But we didn't stop there. We also took it upon ourselves to protect the life-bearing planets we found. If a meteor the size of a mountain was heading toward one, we intercepted it. If disease swept through an alien population, we delivered cures. If they were burning through their resources, we offered them clean, renewable energy. The alien commander gave a skeptical look. Why interfere at all? Why not just leave them to their fate? Steve's expression hardened, because fate is often cruel. We knew what it felt like to be the destroyer of countless worlds. If we had the power to prevent that from happening again, we had a responsibility to use it. This wasn't about playing God's it was about being decent. He shifted slightly, the chains clinking against the table. And when these civilizations grew, something else happened. We taught them, shared knowledge, gave them tools to avoid the mistakes we made, and it worked. Many of them reached space without destroying their own ecosystems, built fleets, formed alliances, and lived in balance with their worlds. A faint smile touched his lips, but it didn't last. But then came the greed. Some of these species, after becoming powerful enough, started eyeing the life-bearing planets we had been protecting. They saw an untouched land, rich with resources, and thought they could take them. We told them no. We explained the first rule. Some listened, others didn't. He paused, letting the silence fill the room before continuing. When words failed, we defended those worlds. We didn't just defend them, we won. Every time, Zald's eyes narrowed. You killed them? Steve's face darkened. We killed billions. And they weren't strangers to us. Many of them were species we had nurtured, taught, and helped for centuries. Some were even allies. Once, but they couldn't understand that protecting those worlds was bigger than any one empire, any one species. They fought us not because they hated us, but because they didn't know any better. And by the time they did, it was too late. His voice grew quieter, carrying a weight that even the alien commander could feel. In our eagerness to protect life, we had forgotten something. Growth comes from challenge. Wisdom comes from struggle. We tried to remove all their hardships, and in doing so, we made them blind to the consequences of their actions. They couldn't see the danger they were creating until it was already upon them. For a moment, Steve looked older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. That's when we made the second rule. No system with a life-bearing planet can be occupied or interfered with unless the contact is made by them first. Zald frowned. So you abandoned them? Steve shook his head. No, we still watched. From afar? Quietly. Something truly catastrophic threatened them, like a supernova or an extinctional-level asteroid, we'd still act. But no more constant interference. They had to grow on their own. They had to make their own mistakes, the way we did. Only then could they truly understand the value of life. The commander didn't respond immediately. He was processing the strange mix of compassion and coldness in the human's words. It was a philosophy that didn't fit neatly into the galaxy's usual view of conquerors and liberators. Steve leaned back, his chains scraping against the table again. "We got a second chance, Commander. And for a while, we did things right. But second chances, they don't last forever." His eyes locked with Zold's, because eventually, someone will break the rules. The enemy on purpose. Steve's tone shifted, becoming sharper, almost like a blade sliding from its sheath. "When we entered this galaxy, Commander," he began, "we found something we hadn't seen before. 150 species spacefaring, powerful, and locked in a political gridlock so tight it was like a powder keg waiting for a spark. Every species had enough weapons to destroy the others, but none dared to start a full-scale war. It wasn't peace, it was fear." Expression tightened. "Mutually assured destruction." "Exactly," Steve said. "A balance that could tip at any moment, and we could see the cracks forming. Alliances shifted like sand. Minor skirmishes were escalating faster than anyone could contain them. All it would take was one big incident, and the entire galaxy would go up in flames." He leaned forward, voice low but steady. "We knew what would happen if war broke out on that scale. Hundreds of life-bearing planets would be caught in the crossfire. Entire species would vanish. The same mistake we made before would happen again. But this time, it wouldn't be our hands pulling the trigger. And that didn't matter. Life would still be lost." Zold folded his arms, suspicious. "So what did you do?" Steve's smile was humorless. "We became the villain." The alien blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. "You? What?" "Realized that the only way to stop these species from tearing each other apart was to give them a common enemy. Someone so dangerous that the only way to survive would be to work together. Someone who could unite enemies, force cooperation, and keep their weapons aimed away from each other. That someone was us." The room went quiet, except for the faint hum of the ship's systems. "We invited the leaders of each species," Steve continued, "one from every major power, to a diplomatic vessel. We told them our history, the truth. We showed them what happens when life-bearing planets are destroyed. We let them see the scale of the damage our mistakes had caused. And then we told them. We were here now, in their galaxy, watching, waiting, and if they wanted to keep us out, they would need to work together to make sure no one broke the rules." Zold's brow furrowed. "You forced them into an alliance by threatening them?" Steve's eyes didn't waver. "We gave them a choice. Cooperation or extinction." The commander gave a dry laugh. "That's not much of a choice." Steve shrugged. "It worked. For thousands of years, the galaxy stayed balanced not because they trusted each other, but because they feared us more. They pooled resources, shared intelligence, and created joint defense fleets to keep the humans in check. All the while, we were quietly making sure life-bearing worlds stayed untouched." There was something chilling about the way Steve described it, like it was just another duty, another mission, without any hint of guilt. "Do you know what happens when you play the enemy for too long, Commander?" Steve asked suddenly. Zold didn't answer. "They start to believe it," Steve said. "Generations passed, and to most of the galaxy, we were the monsters. The stories grew humans who could level planets in ours, fleets that could appear anywhere without warning, weapons beyond comprehension. We didn't stop them from spreading those rumors. In fact, we encouraged them. Fear kept the peace, and if they hated us for it, fine. Better to be hated and have life survive than to be loved and watch it burn." The commander leaned back, processing the human's words and all this. "Just to protect planets that aren't yours?" Steve's gaze hardened. "Once we thought everything belonged to us. That was our first mistake. Now we know better. We don't own these worlds, but we owe them. We can't bring back what we destroyed, but we can stop others from making the same mistake. And if that means painting a target on our backs forever, so be it." He paused, his voice softening but not losing its edge. "The third rule came from this. Those with the wisdom and knowledge are obligated to act to preserve life, no matter the cost. We lived by it. We fought for it, and yes, we bled for it." Zold studied him for a long moment. "Villain, it's dangerous. What happens if someone decides to test you? Steve's mouth curved into a small, cold smile, and we remind them why the galaxy fears us. The commander didn't ask any more questions for a while. There was something unsettling about the way the humans spoke, not like a conqueror, but like a soldier who had accepted a terrible burden and refused to put it down. Finally, Steve broke the silence. We thought the system was stable, but 100 years ago, everything changed. The fourth rule and the final warning, Steve's voice lowered, the weight of his next words hanging in the air like a storm about to break. 100 years ago, he began, we discovered something we'd feared might happen but hoped never. Would the Galactic Council started expanding into systems they knew were off-limits? Zald frowned. Off-limits? You mean life-bearing systems? Steve said sharply. Worlds with native species, civilizations still in their infancy. They knew the rules, Commander. They knew those planets were to be left alone until their people reached space on their own. But greed. Greed doesn't care about rules. They wanted resources, territory, control. So they took them. He began pacing slowly. The chains that once held him now lying broken on the floor like they'd never mattered. The new 7 species, the ones you mentioned, are examples of this, Steve continued. They were primitive when the Council found them. Some had only just learned to harness steam power. And yet, their worlds were suddenly flooded with alien influence. Technology they couldn't understand, and political deals they didn't even know they were making. Their development was stolen from them before it had even begun. Zald's jaw tightened. Why are you telling me this? Because that's when we proposed the fourth rule, Steve said. Simple. Any contact with a species that hasn't reached space travel must be on their terms. No interference, no gifts of technology, no shaping their history. If they look up at the sky and see something above them, it should be a mystery, not a machine deciding their future. He stopped pacing and fixed his gaze directly on the commander. The system you're in right now follows that rule. The natives here are in their early computer-controlled automation age. They're not ready for the stars. To them, anything above their heads would be divine or magical. And you know what happens when primitive civilizations meet gods? It never ends well. Zald scoffed. I'm not here for them. I'm here for resources, minerals, gas planets. This system has plenty of both. Steve tilted his head slightly, almost pitying him. That's what you tell yourself. But you've already broken the fourth rule just by being here. You've already left a footprint. Zald didn't answer. Then, without warning, Steve slid the rest of the restraints off. His wrists. They clattered onto the table like dead weight. The commander froze. How Steve didn't give him time to finish. My ship, he said calmly, is not captured. I am not your prisoner. And this is not an interrogation. Every word hit like a hammer. I volunteered to be here, Commander, Steve continued. I'm here to deliver a message. The reason your long-range communications are down is me. The reason your jump drive isn't charging is me. And the reason you and every member of your crew will be dead in 10 minutes is me. Zald's 10 eyes widened in shock. You're bluffing. Steve's voice stayed calm, almost casual. No, I'm not. This was never about you as an individual. This is about the Council and making sure they understand that the fourth rule is not a suggestion. It is law, and the humans will enforce it, no matter the cost. There was a heavy silence between them, the hum of the ship's systems now sounding louder than before. Zald's mind raced. He thought of the thousands of crew members on board, the sheer size of the Galactic Council fleet he commanded, and the possibility that all of it could be gone in moments. Steve stepped closer, his presence almost suffocating. Any technology, advanced enough, is going to look like magic to someone who's never seen it before. You and your people are playing with fire in a room full of explosives, and if you don't stop, the next explosion will be bigger than you can imagine. The commander's voice finally broke through the tension. What do you want from me? Steve's expression didn't change. Tell the Council exactly what happened here. Tell them the fourth rule is in effect, and tell them the humans are watching. Zald swallowed hard. And if I don't? Leave leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper that felt colder than space itself. And then I make sure. This ship is nothing but drifting debris before your next heartbeat. Without waiting for an answer, Steve turned and walked toward the door. As it slid open, the commander saw something on the human's back, a small, glowing device pulsing like a heartbeat, a failsafe. Steve stepped through the doorway, and the lights in the room flickered. The hum of the ship's systems stuttered. Somewhere deep in the vessel, alarms began to wail. Zald didn't know what would happen next. But he understood one thing with absolute certainty. The humans weren't bluffing, and in 10 minutes, the galaxy would have its reminder.